Hello, today I want to talk about Benford's law. Now, it isn't a law per se. It really tells us what we should expect to observe in terms of the frequency of digits in a large data set. Now, the reason I think this is interesting from a finance or an investment perspective is that we are constantly dealing with lots of data, and we should understand kind of what this natural frequency should look like when we're looking at data. So what this law is all about is if we look at a large data set and we look at all the different individual data items in there, we look at just the first digit of that number, and if we look at that whole data set, then the frequency at which we see one or two or three should follow kind of this distribution. If you do these calculations, I did it here in Excel. You see basically that the number one should be the leading digit roughly 30% of the time, and then this gets smaller and smaller and smaller as we go up through 9. And it seems counterintuitive. We might intuitively expect these just be equal. On average, we should expect 1 to occur 10% of the time and 9 to occur 10% of the time. But that's not what we observe. So we see this law here, this probability distribution that we see, and you can calculate here on your own. So we can also look at this in terms of a line graph if you want, because we're going to do that a little bit earlier. I think it's a little bit more intuitive in terms of comparing some data. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at animal weight. So this is unknown to a lot of people, but it's really popular to buy your pet a weight. Oh, well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about the weight of the animal. So let's go ahead and do that. What I did is I got a data set of animal weights, 736 animals to be precise, but it actually goes beyond that. The problem with this data set is it gives us kind of the average adult weight of a species rounded to the nearest kilogram. And we can see as we get smaller and smaller, we round to 1, and there's a ton after this that rounds to 0. This data set would be much better if we didn't have this rounding, then we could use that digit kind of after the decimal point, so 0 point, whatever that is, and this data set would be better, but it'll help us understand where this law might break down, because it's going to break down here with all these ones that we're going to have in this data set, and we're going to miss out on all those animals that round down to 0. So if we do this in kilograms, using this data set of 736 animals, here we have Benford's law in this kind of yellowish orange color here, and we have the weight in kilograms, the distribution of that first digit here, there, and we can see it's pretty close. As we expected, there's too many ones, again, because we rounded a lot of animal weights to 1, and we're ignoring a lot of these animal weights that round down to 0. But the interesting thing is we could also say, well, why use kilograms? Let's convert that to pounds. So of course, we're going to multiply those kilogram weights by approximately 2.2. I actually went a few decimal places past that, and we get this. So not surprisingly, because all those ones now are multiplied by 2.2, that first digit is 2. So all those ones went away, and then we have an uptick in the 2s. But again, this is a function of our data not being precise. If we had that precise data, we'd see both of these following this trend line pretty nicely. I also said, what the heck? I'm going to throw in there stones as a weight measure. If we do that, again, here we're adding stones. We can see again we're following Benford's law pretty well here, and we could argue that the reasons we're not following it much closer is because we have too many rounding errors in those low weight animals. But pretty interesting here. So just to give you some history, this was first observed in 1881 by Simon Newcomb, and what he was doing is he was looking at logarithmic tables for his work, and he found that the tables that started with 1, those pages were really worn compared to the pages 8, 9, 8, and 9, etc. So that was how he first observed this. Then, of course, Benford did it. So he did it approximately 50 years later. This is not surprisingly also called the Newcomb-Benford law. I'm not sure why Benford gets the majority of the credit. Also called the law of anonymous numbers, and of course, as you might expect, the first digit law. So, of course, this doesn't apply to all data sets. Some people did some research out there, kind of looking through Wikipedia pages, and what they found is that they looked at kind of the lowest atmospheric pressure in different spots across the globe, that this really didn't work. And I think part of the problem was that range is just so small. A lot of those numbers just happen to be starting with 1, just because that's where barometric pressure, the way we measure it, lines up. Small data sets, the smaller the data set, the worse it's going to be. As we saw earlier, if you're not accurate, you're going to have some you're gonna have some problems there. If values don't vary enough, you're gonna find some problems. So you wouldn't want to apply this to say, hey, populations in cities that have populations between 300 and 900 people. Obviously, you're not going to get a lot of ones when that isn't even a possibility. This notoriously doesn't work for square roots or reciprocals, doesn't work for life expectancy for species, but it works for a ton of data out there, right? So next time I want to talk about how we can use this to be, to apply it to finance, be better analysts, et cetera. Anyway, I hope you enjoy that. Thanks so much for listening.